sauce there. On the topic of sauce, I watched way too many videos this morning about people's preferences between flats and drums.
I saw something about that yesterday. Lots of people are into flats. I'm more of a drum guy.
You know what I like about the flats? I think it's the flats that you can actually kind of smash the end on it easier. Like the meat just comes off. Here's the thing. Still want to know though, because I get the problem with the wings thing. Oh, by the way, go ahead. Do our handle for today. What episode is it? Season what?
This is season 8, episode 4, number 310 of the Decoded podcast.
Fantastico. My issue with wings is I want them to prepare the wing in such a way that if you do the smash, you can kind of push it off the end and just eat it like a lollipop. Like you don't have to chew the gristle. I don't mind chewing the gristle. Heck, I remember back in the day when I was one of my most, what my favorite flavor of gum used to be? Beef gristle. What's my favorite? So gross, but so delicious. Not chicken gristle. I'm not a fan of chicken gristle. Not a fan really. But beef gristle, I'm down. So back in the day, way back when, and good morning to anyone who's unintentionally joined our podcast at this point. Back in the day Gary, good morning. So back in the day when I was doing snowboard instructing when I was out in Jasper for that stretch, my favorite day of the week was Sundays. It's because I had most Sundays off, so I could just ride the hill. And also because I had good relationships, I'd get a little bit of prime rib from the kitchen, right? The main chalet down on the base. And so, and all I would get, dude, like they had these small paper plates. They put a chunk of beef on it and they just fold the paper plate. And I'd go walking out. I'd get on the lift. I'd go up and I'm like eating beef, like ripping pieces of beef out of like this paper plate. It's dripping on the ground. I'm happy. I swear my snowboard pants probably back in the day had like drippings on it, right? Perfect. Anyways, yeah, delicious, right? A little bit of seasoning, salt, maybe some sauteed onion in there. It's like a taco. You just don't eat the shell. Anyways, I usually get to the top of the lift. I'm done the flesh part of it. Like the meat is gone, but I'm just coming up that last few bits of the lift and I'm just chewing the gristle. Not the fat. Fat's already gone. I like that part too. I can admit that. But the gristle, just kind of chewing it. And then at some point it's gone. I'm like, damn, did I swallow that? I think I swallowed that. All that collagen. So it made my hair so nice and shiny when I was a kid. My fingernails strong. Anyways, I get back to chicken. I'm not as much of a fan of chicken gristle. So the smashing thing and turning into a lollipop, I need someone to figure out how to, when you do that, the gristle stays on the bone and the meat and the skin goes in your mouth. The flesh and the skin goes in your mouth. So, Gary, if you got a method for doing that, I'm also okay with like kind of squirreling around it, trying to like just eat it off. But I am the guy that just kind of grabs it and shoves it in my mouth, and and I'm like working the meat off the bone. Like I don't actually spit it, but like it's in the bowl.
Well, I got to tell you, if Rochelle wasn't a vegan, she could tell us what she preferred. But bon matin.
They have, they would just call them bon matin. They would call them boneless vegan wings.
There's such thing, I'm sure.
Chicken bites.
Mm-hmm. Or not, vegan chicken bites, whatever that is. So your story,
my reminiscence.
It takes me right back to. I love this notion of going into the kitchen, and because you've made some connections, people are happy to provide you with some nourishment. Back in the day, my buddy, one of my good buddies that I hung out with, his sister worked at the Ottawa Congress Center. And at one point she got him a job there as a busboy. And then he brought me on too. And I'll never forget. So the Ottawa Congress Center was a place where they had all kinds of like conferences, concerts, and I would work them. And I was in the beverage department with my buddy Jason. And I'll never forget my first time working, so I'm behind the bartenders and I'm basically their assistant. And then food comes out, they serve the people at the whatever the event was. It wasn't weddings or anything, it was more business type stuff. And then next thing you know, Jason's like, "Come with me. It's our turn." And I was like, "Our turn for what?" And we go like behind, like into the kitchen area, and there's food everywhere. And they're like, "We get to eat now. Everybody else is eating. We're the last ones on the list. There's still some good stuff." I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is like the best thing ever." So you enjoy high quality food, then you go back to work. But the part of this that I want to get to is I'll never forget the night that I became a bartender, because I was never like that. I just remember um, the guy in charge, his name was Chuck. And Chuck, he was a bit of an asshole, but I didn't mind him. I mean, he's working nights, he's working with liquor and booze, like it's not a fun thing. So he's always pissed off. But I remember one night he's like, "Where's so and so?" They're like, "They didn't show up." He's like, "Roland, get to the front." And then he was showing me, "Here's the pop, here's the selection of beer. All they need is a ticket, no money exchanged." I was like, "I'm serving alcohol?" He's like, "What's the problem? Let's go." And I remember getting shoved up beside like four other bartending people, and people were coming up to me asking for beer. I was popping beers, pouring them. It was the most surreal experience ever. Even me saying I was a bartender does not sound right. Anybody who knows me would be
Mm,
like, "You were a bartender?" And they have maybe a stereotype. Nah, I was a fake bartender. No money was exchanged. It was limited amounts of beer. When there was liquor, it was limited amounts of liquor. And it was just constantly pouring drinks, giving them to people, being friendly, and then waiting for my opportunity to eat good food when it was my turn. Um, and then at the end of every shift, when we would take all our stuff back down to the fridge and all this, we would sit in the back of the fridge where there were no cameras, all the bartenders and staff that were old enough to drink, and
hmm
Chuck would let everybody have a drink. This was weird for me because I'm not a big drinker.
hmm
So I remember being there thinking, I don't want to be here. I want to go home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. And everybody was like, this is what they lived for. They lived for putting everything away and then going into the fridge to the back where the cameras couldn't see you to have a drink. I'm like, this is what people live for? I just want to go home.
Mm.
So thank you for your story about getting your food, getting on the lift, soiling your pants in the best of ways. I did not have that experience. I did experience cool cooking in an environment like that where I probably didn't belong, but man, there was some good food some nights. I don't even know what it was. It was so fancy. I was just like, okay, I'll eat this.
I dig it.
You
I
dig it.
dig it. I dig it. Wings, flats, gristle, beer,
Bartending,
bartending,
snowboarding.
snowboarding. That was good. That was good.
So last weekend I had wings on Sunday. I was craving
Flavor?
wings. Oh, we had like sweet chili Thai,
hmm
uh, garlic parmesan, jerk flavored, hot, like hot barbecue, and then like a Texas tequila, I think it's called. It was good.
Only the jerk made my mouth water. All the others, my mouth was like meh. Like as you were saying the flavors, you hit jerk on my mouth went a little bit of
That's
waterfall action in there. Yeah. And then hot. The tequila, I don't know. I don't know. I think I had the garlic parm. You and I think we went to what's the pub? The pub that's known for the wings. Last time we were there, I think we tried the
Morty's.
Morty's.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had the. I think we had the garlic parm. I think.
I had the honey mustard.
Oh, did you?
It was good, or hot honey mustard. You may have had garlic parm. I
Maybe.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, sometimes I feel like it's just they've smeared Caesar salad dressing on them, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And the sweet chili. something like that. It's funny, something like that. Like we have it. That's always in our house. That sweet chili sauce. We always have it. It's like our dipping sauce um
Of choice.
that and Frank's. We go through a ton of it here, right? And you start to get like kind of like a refinement to the palate. Like we know the ones that are better and worse. And if you're picking up a bottle like this with the red label, it has the chicken on the front of it, almost like sriracha, but it's slightly different. Like you're picking that up for $7 somewhere in there, right? And it's mostly sugar. Like there isn't a lot of flavor to it. And then there's smaller ones like here you're picking up for $5-6, but they have a really great flavor profile. And it's funny that sweet chili, typically it falls too much on the sweet side, but I've had one that has a slight vinegar backbone to it, and it's absolutely like great. Waterfalls. It's just my mouth's watering right now, that one. So the sweet chili didn't do it. Garlic parm. That's that mention of the jerk. I will say I had never had jerk wings, but I am a huge fan of, like, you put jerk on anything, I'm down. I'm a big jerk liker.
Well, the dad nachos I make usually is with jerk chicken, and that's what the kids crave. My wife doesn't really like it, so I always make sure
No, Karen
I always,
doesn't either.
I always make
Karen's not
sure
down.
that there's a chicken breast, excuse me, that's not been jerked, and
Right.
I'll chop that up and put them aside for her to make her own nachos. But the kids love it. Jerk chicken nachos.
Jerk chicken nachos.
Rochelle agrees with you. Sweet chili heat is usually too sweet.
Yeah, I just find, if you, there's one commercial one, is it Blue Orchid, Blue something, Blue Tie? It's a smaller bottle. It has the chili flake, has the actually what I do sometimes, if it's too sweet, I will add in I'll dose it. I'll add a little bit of apple cider vinegar, a little bit more chili flake, and some chopped up garlic, and that gets me there. And if I push it too far, I'll bring it back with some honey. Mouth's watering again. I did it to myself.
Nothing wrong with that, I don't think.
Nothing wrong with that. Now, I am curious. So, Rochelle, wait, we've covered the ground. Vegan, vegetarian?
I'm
Maybe?
messing.
Or is it a back in the day statement? My question just is, like, Rochelle, what are you throwing that dip on? Like, what is it that what's your preferred? I will say that same dipping sauce. No, wait for it. But that same dipping sauce. I'm going to jump in even before. I'm going to see if I can guess it. The vegetable spring rolls, because the fried savory. Oh, there it goes again. I'm questioning my breakfast choices already. I had 2 samosas, which was pretty good, and I did have some chili sauce in the bottom of the bowl. So I'll do that. I'll throw them in the toaster oven and put a little bit of chili sauce in the bottom there, and just. Delicious. Yeah, curious though. What's that? Gary, you're awfully quiet. You're not getting in on this sauce and wing conversation, Gary. We're not hooking you with it.
No, we're not hooking Gary. I hope Gary's ears were burning this week, because I thought of him a million times as I was working on my e-learning course. I have so many questions for Gary.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where it's like, I think I'm going to message Gary, and then somebody walks in and says, "Hey, there's a kid out here that's asking for you. Can you help?" I'm like, yeah, I can help.
And the idea just goes.
Yeah, it's gone. It's like, it'll have to happen later. Okay, Rochelle's dropping the official bomb here.
There we go.
She just can't eat dairy and eggs. She eats meat.
We have to check the notes. I am remembering this now, right? So
I'm just a jerk, and I just keep calling her vegan, but she can eat meat, so her preference is boneless chicken wings. Okay.
So chicken nuggets. Isn't that what they are? It's not what they are. You know what? I like boneless steak. And you're like, okay, so I'm a hamburger? Okay. I'm just playing, Rochelle. I'm just playing.
Rochelle's never coming back now.
You never know. Part of this is like there's I think we're mostly harmless, right? We're mostly harmless.
Well, she is laughing with us, so that's
all right. At least the emoji, right? And then it's just like, I'm logging off. I'm out of here.
I'm logging off.
Yeah.
That's
maybe
Gary is. Gary's probably gone.
No, let's see if we can hook Gary back in, because in the on ramp, I put down that if you can get, so a kid hasn't handed anything in, nothing. Everyone's throwing their arms up in the air.
Rochelle
There
has
we
3
go.
brothers.
Rochelle, you got 2 more here. 5 in total. So kid, everyone that you're talking to, they're like, yeah, the kid just won't hand anything in. They're like, I don't know what's going on. And they have that Seinfeld kind of a voice. I don't know what's going on. The kid won't hand in their work. I don't get it. In the path of that sort of like conversation in the on-ramp, Gary, I pose this idea that if you can get the kid the first 25% of whatever the kid, like, we'll talk about marks here from a marks perspective. Whatever you can get them to hand in, it's the first 25% that has highest risk. But if you can get them to hand something in, getting them to the 50 is really simple. If they can get over that and just get something in to kind of get the ball rolling, getting them through that is, and there's different tactics for both, different for both. But that first 25% has to do with trust and risk. And then the second part has to do with relationship. And this came out of Chids and I talking about, I had a PA day yesterday. So part of the professional development where I'm in York Region District School Board. So a public school board, pretty big school board. We have, back in the day,
Poor
perfect.
Gary's driving, and you're
I
like, "Jump
that
in, Gary."
that better be voice to text. Okay, so we want all of our participants to be safe. So we've had an assessment evaluation policy for forever, as many boards do. We've recently added in equity, so it's now equity assessment and evaluation. And in sort of pursuing equity, we're coming into some really complicated places because people, according to Growing Success, they want to be able to penalize. They want to penalize in order to encourage submission of work. And in the process of that, or the unwinding of this idea, we're forgetting that, well, a few different things. We're forgetting that we need to have a discussion or to be able to reveal what's our intent and actually penalizing. Because you don't do it just for punitive measures. There has to be an intent. There has to be sort of like a thought through method here as to why you're doing that. Because there's high risk. If you're doing it just, if you actually said you're doing it because that's what the real world's about, you're wrong. If you're doing it because it's encouraging accountability and responsibility, you're wrong. If you're doing it just because you're an asshole, you're wrong. If you're doing it because that's how we used to do it, you're wrong. If you're doing it because that kid needs to be taught a lesson, you're wrong. And we're not spending, at least in my board, we're now in this phase of we need to kind of route out these origin stories as to why we're actually using this. Problem being is that departments kind of protect themselves and they say this is a departmental policy, so we have to do it. And it's making it a little bit difficult for individuals to kind of go, but I'd like to say something, right? So this discussion about the how and any of the 5 W's plus H of assessment and the method by which a kid hands something in, one of the places I've landed in on is like, I like to really be creative with that first 25%. And I will be as open as possible just to get that first 25% in. Now, a kid that's not handing, typically kids don't suddenly just stop handing things in. Like, there's a path here. Sometimes it's just a matter of the kid will share the story, or you can talk to the right person to find out what happened, or the slow kind of like not handing things in. So that's my starting point right now. There's a lot more to the story as far as the assessment evaluation. I got kind of edgy. I got edgy with my department. I didn't get edgy. I didn't get edgy. I went to the edge. I kind of said, I'm going to bring you to where my thinking is right now. I'm not going to make it easy for you I'm not going to like walk you up to it. I didn't scaffold it for the department. I disagreed with someone. I told someone, I think you're wrong. And I actually had a mini confrontation in the conversation, but that was fine. I'll work that one out. But yeah, the first 25%, is that the most challenging in sort of when you have a student that's not handing stuff in? But the most profitable, I think. That's all I got for now.
Well, my position on all this is I do agree with you that you got to get You got to get pen to paper, so to speak.
Mhm.
You need something. I need something from a student to go somewhere with it, even if it's they're presenting it to me orally and I'm recording it on paper. I need something. I love what you said about relationship, that the 0 to 25%, 0 to
Trust.
25% is
Trust and
trust,
risk. Trust and risk.
and then 26 to 50 is relationship. And I got to tell you, from where I'm sitting, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I've been teaching for a million years, so it's not like I need to only refer to my work in secondary, which is brief, but my work up until this year, I've had to sit with 6-year olds and go
Mm.
from to try to get from 0 to 25%, right? The difference is, it's not about the numbers like it is in secondary. And I know Gary, this is the best thing about Gary these days. He would disagree with me. He's like, it's not about the numbers. That's just the way that secondary culture is, and they want to remain that way because it's black and white. It's very easy to deal with. Um, every time I ask Gary a question about assessment and evaluation in secondary, he just says to me, growing success, Roland. Most recent, most consistent. Consider that. Growing success. He keeps taking me back, and I'm like, I feel like growing success was my bread and butter in elementary. And then I move into secondary, and I don't think anybody, well, I shouldn't say this. I feel like the numbers are strong in secondary for a number of different reasons. I'm not saying it has to totally go away, but what I'm saying is I've worked with kids where trust and risk taking needed to happen. I needed something from them, and I needed to think outside the box and be creative in order to move from 26% to 50.
Hmm.
And I told you a couple of things in the on ramp that I don't think I'm going to say publicly, but what I will tell you is I consider myself an educator who's always been open to finding a way to lead a student to success. And some people would say they would disagree with my philosophy, they disagree with my practice. And I would say to them, in the big picture, in the very big picture of this life that we live, I don't know about you, but I remember the moments where teachers in particular, um, teachers didn't take pity on me, but recognized that I had something to offer, and I just couldn't provide it in the black and white way that they or someone else said it had to come in that way. And so they flexed, they took a risk on me. And where did that lead me? It led me to where I am today, and that's what I remember about those people. That's what I remember about my educational experience. So I told you in a polo yesterday about a student I was working with yesterday who I had worked with all week in student success, in the student success room. And yesterday, when her and I were kind of going back and forth, I did disclose, I did share about an experience I had in high school, similar to what she was kind of going through. And I said, listen, you're here, you're doing the work, you got to get the credit to go to where you think you want to go.
Hmm.
Because she thinks she knows what she wants to do. And I'm laughing. I'm like, kid, you're in grade 11. Like, life's going to shift a zillion times before you get to 48, and you'll see where you end up. But you're making your plans. God's laughing because that's not how it works. But anyway, so she's telling me, I'm like, look, I said to her, I'm not even supposed to be sitting here with you doing this. And she was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I would, if I would have told people in high school when I was in grade 11 that I was going to be a teacher, they would have fallen off their chair laughing because I didn't fit a mold that supposedly you need to fit to be a teacher. I'm like, I'm sitting across from you right now as you're ready to lose your mind. I'm telling you to take it easy, breathe a little bit, because this is a moment. You're going to get past this moment. You've done good work all week. Don't let something that just happened in class ruin it. I mean, you
Hmm.
can if you want. I don't think it's worth it. You've done great work. Anyway, she's looking at me and she's like, she was stuck on, "You're not supposed to be a teacher." I'm like, "Well, if you go back and you ask the teachers that taught me, and if you talk to my English teacher, she'll tell you that I couldn't even do what they wanted me to do in class." And then I dropped the bomb on the kid and I said, "My grade 12 English teacher pulled me aside after I did the worst presentation ever and said to me, 'I will give you a 50 in this course if you promise me you won't take grade 13 English at the school.'" And I remember, you should have seen the kid's face. And I said to the kid, "What was I going to do? I wasn't a very good student. I didn't think I was smart. I I did a presentation where everybody was laughing at me. I'm like, what am I going to do? Say no to her? Go home and tell my dad, who was probably going to blame me because back then parents actually like listened to teachers.
Oh
My
yes.
If I said to my dad, this is what my teacher said to me, my dad would have said, "What are you doing? What are you doing for a teacher to say that to you? What are you not doing?" Like that would have been the last day of my life because my dad would have been like, "What's going on with you? Forget what the teacher
Hmm.
said. What's your problem?" So I said to the kid, "What was I going to do?" Like I could have talked back to her. That wasn't going to lead anywhere. My dad would have killed me. Like I had no option. So I said to her, "Yes, okay, it's a deal." And, I guess I would say one of my strengths is when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. So I went to summer school and I got my grade 13 English in summer school and I did really well there. And then when I went into grade 13, I didn't have the stress of taking English like everybody else because I had already done it. So I had my one
Right.
requirement to get into an arts program. You know what I'm saying? So I was like,
Absolutely.
this is great. I tell the kid this, and the kid's just looking at me dumbfounded. And I'm like, I get it. It's Friday. You're coming in here with 20 minutes left in the day, ready to lose your mind. Breathe. You're going to be okay. I'm not supposed to be sitting in front of you right now.
Right.
And then we went into something else. But I could see the stress of the system on this kid. Like, I must operate this way, but I don't operate this way. But the teacher wants this, but didn't say this. And the last thing I'll end on is I wanted to tell you this in the on ramp. When you were talking about teachers don't teach kids how to learn and how to do the things they need to do to be successful. In this week alone, I've had several students say to me, "My teacher doesn't teach." And I'm like, I'm thinking, God damn, can we stop complaining about everybody? Like, okay, you're in the room. How can I help you? Because they're like, "My teacher doesn't teach. They just say, do this." They put stuff on the whiteboard and they say, "Do this." And I'm like, okay, let me look at this and see if I can decipher what it is and I can start building with you. But, bro, I don't think I've ever heard more in my life than this week. Teachers don't teach, which I make a connection to you around kids don't know what to do. They don't know, there's no scaffolding. And there's all kinds of arguments against it, like, well, they should have learned that in elementary, blah, 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 blah,
Oh
blah.
my God, I
I'm just
hate
saying.
that. I know.
Just
Oh, you made my mouth water just like the wings, but in a bad way.
so I've been spending my time building, scaffolding, providing tidbits. I don't know if the kids are listening to me. I don't know if they care, but I'm like, this is how you build. Start
Hmm.
here, start small. It's all good stuff. Like, why overwhelm yourself? Start with the one thing that you need to do and build from there. But what about? That's why you're losing your mind because you keep thinking about the whatabouts. No. Step 1. What do you need to do? What is this question asking you? What is this assignment about? Like,
Hmm.
just break it down. Break it down. I'm going to end there for now. I just I resonate. It resonates with me.
I like that for now. I'm gonna end for now. Bum bum bum. I would also say, so Rochelle drops in some wisdom. I'd also say that you have. I'd also say. I would also say you have. Was that led your students to serve? I think there's something. What do you think? Decode that one for me.
A decoded podcast will
Yeah,
decode
decode,
their
decode it.
shells. I would also say what you have was lead your student success. I think she's making a comment about leading students to success, which makes me
Yeah.
think it's not just about here, do this. It's about,
Mm,
and she'll correct us if we're wrong. It's about
absolutely.
what do you need to do to get there? What do you need
Yes.
to do to get there?
Do it like this. Do it sort of like this. Not just do
Ways,
this.
ways.
Ways. Yeah, ways. Okay.
You have ways to lead your students to success.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm
Yeah.
I'm seeing now, that if we could compare my elementary experience to my brief secondary
Mm.
experience, I'm
Valuable
seeing,
perspective.
thank you. In elementary, when they give you a class of 26 kids for 10 months, it's carte blanche. It's, here's your curriculum and here are your kids and we'll see you in 10 months. So in that 10 months, there's so much flex. There's so much, Jimmy, come here, sit beside me. What's going on? What's the problem with this? Explain this to me. And you start to build you get a profile for Jimmy, right? And you really know how to accommodate Jimmy. Jimmy really knows how to push your buttons. Like this, it's really cool. It's a human experiment. But then you get to secondary and here are your 30 kids for period 1. And I've got all this stuff to cover. And well, if they're in grade 10, they got here by learning things from, grade 9 down. So I'm not judging the teachers, because I'm not judging. I'm just saying, they're like, this is what we're doing today. Here's what you need to work on to show me, or to practice the concept so that you can show me somewhere down the road that you understand. And some kids are just like, hold on a second. I can't, it's like drinking from a fire hose, which I totally understand because that's what I've been doing for the last 4 weeks. And it's just not, there's no flex. I'm seeing like some teachers are better at it than others. And I don't know why. Like, I don't know why. I just know, I kind of feel like I'm in the right place right now where I have flexed. My whole job is flex. And the kids are just like, I don't know what to do. And there's pressure to do well because it's about numbers again, right? It's about, I need this mark, or I want to go to university for this, or I want to do this. You know how many kids want to go into the trades now? In my life, I've never heard so many people say that they're interested in a trade, which is friggin' awesome. But then I've got kids coming in to finish their safety stuff for their tech courses. They can't use any of the machines or the hardware because they've not passed the safety component, right? Because for whatever reason, they're missing school. This one, this one kid, I was with him for all of last week, every day, period 5. He comes in, first he complains there's so much of this safety paperwork. I'm never going to get it done. And I'm like, bro, start with the first question and then go to the second question. So I literally had to sit with him and say, open the book. Like I scaffolded the whole thing. Now, whether he's lazy or he really doesn't know, I don't know. But I'm like, open the book, go to number 1. What does it say? I took him through the first few. I'm like, this is what you have to do. What I just did to you for questions 1 to 5, you got to do it from 6 to 100. End of the week comes, he finally has access to the test. He does the test, he passes the test. He's so happy. Okay. I'm happy. I'm like, this is awesome. It was nice meeting you. I'm probably never going to see you again. You know what this kid does? He laughs. He goes, no, I'm going to be in here all the time. I don't go to class. I don't do any work. They send me here. And I'm dying laughing like, oh, shoot. So you'll be back? He's like, I should be. And if you're in here period 5, I'll see what I can do about period 5. He was excited to come back. And I'm like, I don't want you back in here. I don't want you to not do your work so that you can come here under the gun every day. But it was funny because we were both happy for different reasons. I'm like, you got through it. It took you a week, but you did it. And he's like, I'll be back, man. This is what I do. See, that's different than what other people are doing.
And
Right?
some may argue in that, because I've been in that moment where that that experience could be dismissed and somehow not the right way to do school. But I would argue that that kid, in their comedy and lightness and self-awareness and sort of, there's some jokes in there, but the kernel of it is that you just got over the first 25%. You got into that zone of relationship, and it happens fast and slow. There's no surefire way to do it, but noticing that you're there is critical, because that kid coming back is a kid that's staying in school. That's it. And um in my world, students that are at risk of not staying in school, one of the componentry is them not having that adult, that person that makes them want to come into school. I think we get caught up in sometimes in sort of the thought that because the kid's in school that they have to be in every single one of their classrooms. But if we take the whole well, you and I talked about this, and I wish we had time to dig into it now, because F me, we're gonna forget to come back, gonna forget to come back to it next week. You and I touched on this philosophically 3 or 4 years ago, when I was so stoked for you to walk your students through the school, and we talked about the school as a whole learning environment. So you have computers in the hallway, you have couches in the hallway, you have different learning, the vinyl activities on the floor where you can do a little exercise. You have interactivity outside the box. So, yes, you have your classroom, comfort zone, coordination, organization, compartmentalization. Fine. Go back to your class. You can learn there too. But we touched on this philosophy of like, if the kids are in, if you have a kid avoiding class, but you see them hanging in the halls, then teach them in the halls. If you have a kid that will only sit outside front of the grass of the school, then teach them out front and inside in the school. Like, find ways to do that, and you'll get through that 25% where it seems like this kid is completely disenfranchised. And it's yes, fine, you're their person. You're good for them, kids. And we know we don't really like that either. But sometimes just getting over that first 25%, you get a peek at what's actually motivating and the mechanics of the kid doing school avoidance. It just kind of gets there. And then you're sitting in a student success meeting, and you're like, you know what? Just put a desk outside the classroom. The kid will come sit there and do their work. And just like this kid that's sort of saying to you, yo, kids, I'll be back next week. One hand, that's a double edge. One hand saying, I like you, dude. I feel safe with you. We're through the first 25%. The other part acknowledging, like, I don't really do school well. So chances are someone's going to refer me back to you. Somewhere through the middle is the willingness to do school if we actually figure out the algorithm, which is right in front of us there. Let the kids sit in student success. Let's get them from the 25 to the 50. And then we can just say, you're good to go. Like, just keep on doing it, replicate. And then somehow we put that information out there. Just like this assessment policy, we're no longer, if we think that every kid has to be inside that classroom box to be doing school right, we're wrong. And schools that are exploring those ways to kind of like look at whole school learning, whole school environment learning, and they're making design choices to be inclusive in the hallway and expressive and integrative and creative. I bet you those are schools where the kids they don't even know they're at school, because we've stripped away, they do, but we've stripped away some of the cachet and the punitive, and we could even say carceral elements of school, where you're going to get a detention, the attendance is mandatory, that percentage means success or failure. It becomes, we can do school as an experience. And as long as we can get kids doing school as an experience, we can talk a little bit less about assessment as like a punitive measure, because we're cashing in on a willingness just to be around the coaches in the school, aka teachers, aka mentors, aka caring adult. Man, it ain't simple, but I think that's the Kool-Aid more educators need to be drinking.
I I don't disagree with you about trying to teach the kid where they are, where they end up. But as you know, because you're a secondary teacher, you don't even need to be a secondary. You're a teacher in a in public in the public
Hmm.
system. You understand the pressures that are placed on everybody. Like that the teacher has to make sure that certain things happen inside their course to
Hmm.
pass a student to the next course. Like I'm trying not to ignore those things, but I am more leaning towards the things you're saying because you know, as I observe what's happening and the position I'm in, it is very cool to still be excuse me, in a position where I have some flexibility. Like a couple of really cool things happened yesterday. They just so it happened yesterday and I can talk about them today. The first one was when I was out of the room and I was working on some other stuff, I got an email from one of the student success teachers. This student success teacher emailed all the everybody who works in the student success room, the administrators, and a student's four teachers, and said, so and so's in student success this morning. The only way she's going to stay at school today is if we keep her in student success. So she's going to be here all day. Um, I'm making sure that everybody who works in student success today is on this email. So when you come into student success to do your section in here, check in with the student, call the classroom teacher, find out what they need to do, and remind them to record it in the student success spreadsheet. I was like, we can do that? Like, I I like this. That this teacher, kind of my mentor, I've been observing him and asking him questions and listening to him. He's been doing this for a long time. So he gets things. So when I went into student success for my period working in there, I went right up to the girl. I'm like, hey, so and so, I'm Mr. Chidiak. She's like, yeah, I saw your picture up there. I'm like, awesome. What class are you? And I knew all this. I knew what course she was doing, fifth period. I knew who the teacher was. I knew it, but I needed to connect. So I was like, what course are you doing now? And she tells me. I'm like, okay, cool, cool. Um, you've got stuff to do. She goes, so I was just gonna go to the D2L and work on the next thing. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna call your teacher, let them know you're here, check in. I call the teacher and I do my part. But in my brain, it was like so important that I connect with that person. I'm like, you're not just a kid sitting at a desk doing work and I'm just gonna ignore you. I need to know, I need to connect because we pulled you out of class all day because there was a risk that you were gonna go. For that day, this kid needed to be in that room, and she worked the whole time. Like when I kind of saw her at the end of first period, she was working away, and then for the whole fifth period, she was just working. So it's not like she was sitting there doing nothing. So that's the first thing I saw. I was like, okay, this is cool. Like this is a kid comes to the room, there's something going on that's bigger than school. It's be at school or go away and nobody knows where you are. And you get behind in all these courses that you need to do all this work. The second one was this was kind of cool because people were leaning on me for my opinion, which I was like, you're asking me my opinion. Um, Fifth period starts and I'm at the door. Kids are coming in. I'm making sure I check them in and I give them their instruction, like you're sitting here and this is what you're going to do. And I'll check with you and whatever. This one student comes to the door who looks familiar. She's in the room a lot. And she goes, can I talk to you for a second? I'm like, yeah, sure. And she says, can I work in here this period? I was like, have you been to your fifth period class, talk to your teacher? She's like, yeah, he sent me to talk to the CYCW. I just talked to her and she said I needed to talk to you. So it's like, I said, um, who's your teacher and what room are you supposed to be in? So she tells me the teacher and she says, I think it's this room. I'm like, I'm gonna call that room. And if it's the wrong room, you owe me a coffee. And I'm doing this all with a straight face. She smiles. She's like, I'm not gonna owe you a coffee. That is the room. I'm like, you're sure? She's like, yeah. So I call the teacher and it's a teacher I happen to know, which is kind of nice because I don't know 90% of them. I'm like, hey, it's Chidiak in student success. So and so's here. She wants to know if she can work in here. And he says to me, dude, she's had a rough week. I'm happy she's at school. I got no problems with her being there if as long as you're good with it. I'm like, why is everybody asking me if I'm okay? I got to make the decision. So I'm like, yeah, I'm cool with it. So I say to him, sign her in, do all that, do all this stuff I don't want to do so I can work with kids. He's like, I'll do that. She comes in, I tell her, yeah, you can work in here. This is what he wants you to work on. And again, she goes and she gets right to work. So I'm biased. If a kid needs the flex and the kid's going to do their part, I will like friggin' pull a Kool-Aid guy and jump through a wall for you if I have to. I will.
I love that image.
But if you're going to sit in there and pick your nose and go on your phone every 5 seconds and I gotta beg you to put it away or I'm tossing it, I start to simmer. I've talked to you about a couple of times I've simmered. I don't like that feeling. I like it
Hmm.
when the other human does their part, no matter what
Hmm.
it is. So, but I know not all kids are gonna do their part. Some of them are just they're just for whatever for a million reasons they're just not. And it's frustrating because it's like I'm the lowest common denominator in your life at school, and you still won't move the needle. So I think, okay, well, I guess I have time to try to build relationship and to try to establish the trust for you to take that risk and have me not jump down your throat, whether it's right, wrong, whatever. Um, some of the time I say to the kids, hey, I'm not the classroom teacher. So if this is what they assigned, then we'll work through it. And if you're on an IEP, then I will accommodate you as required to make sure you're getting what you need. But this business of coming in complaining the whole time doesn't work for me. This
Hmm.
business of coming in and deciding you're just going to sit there and play on your phone doesn't work for me. I almost called the office this week because I
Mm.
was so bothered with this kid. I said like 3 times, like, you need to put your phone away now. And the kid just wouldn't. So I finally said, I need you to put your phone over here. And then one of the other teachers in the room went over to talk to them because I think they saw that I was on the fence. I was about to call the office and say, I did everything you told me to do with the phone. They just won't put it away.
Hmm.
So I guess it's time for you to come and get their phone or
Hmm.
what, like, and I don't even want to go there.
The progressive, whatever the
Yeah,
progressive
whatever it
discipline
is,
is. Yeah.
it's like I got to the end where it's like, I think I've been more than reasonable. And now
Hmm.
this person just doesn't want to do what they're supposed to do. Yeah, I struggle with that. I struggle right now with that.
I would say this is one of the I think that any equity or equitably minded teacher, balanced teacher, open thinking teacher, creative teacher can get that space. I think part of that is what does your team look like that's kind of helping support this, right? And moments like that, um and I know this from parenting. Yeah, there may be a real outcome that has to happen here, but you might not be the one to deliver it. So you might need someone to kind of tag in. Now, um, asserting authority or offloading it to a higher authority is, like that is a compliance move, right? Because there's a rule that we feel there's an outcome or a rule that has to be satisfied. And if it ain't me, then it'll be somebody else. I think that sometimes in teams we're hesitant to kind of jump in and kind of say, "Hey, I got this. Like, let me talk to them for a sec." And I think there's something in there about, maybe we carry the ball too long. Like we need to have a team that we can kind of pass it off to and just be open about that and kind of say, okay, I get it. You're not going to put your phone away from me, kid. We've had this conversation. Let me see if I can get someone who can like talk to you about this because you are in this space next. Like according to progressive discipline, here's the next step. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't back up and do it for somebody else. And then that means for the person who is trying to convince them that you can step back from your ego thinking like the kid has to do it for you. It just has to be done, but maybe not, it's not going to happen. You probably have noticed this, I'll guess, like not every teacher has had, I will say, the privilege of having an EA or support staff in your classroom. And I do really feel um supported, privileged, like like I'm chuffed to have another adult in the classroom with me, because you automatically have to learn these kind of like, it might not be you that's going to get this kid to do this thing. And accepting that you're just kind of a clear signpost of location, but not the actual um, motivator or locomotive in the kid's engine to move towards that next thing. But at least you've been clear. Fine. I'll back off with my sort of approach. And this has happened countless times when I have, the EA in the room. The EA is like, let me talk to him for a sec. And then they go and the thing gets done. I'm like, cool. And you realize that it's about the action. It's not about the compliance. And if you can kind of get the separation there, then you increase the likelihood that the next time you give pressure, you don't have that extra layer of being the asshole. You could still step back and maybe ask the kid the next time, and they may do it. Maybe it's more likely they do it if they kind of look over, even if they look over at the EA that's sitting over in the corner and the EA is like this. Do it. I think there's this is I think what we sometimes miss in the fabrication or the fabric of a supportive team is that, yes, of course, there's rules of engagement that we have to have. There's decorum, there's responsibility, there's sort of, you know, actions have consequences or actions have effects, right? But I also think that that moment where you're sort of feeling like you're going to have to call the office, the kid wasn't really doing anything to you. The kid just wasn't doing what was being asked. And if we can kind of have a moment, have a path where we separate those two and we can kind of say, okay, Mike, can you come over here for a sec? And you're actually calling the EA to course, say, Mike, I'd appreciate it. Can you just have a conversation with Jimmy here, just to remind about the rules? And then you pass off to Mike and you go off and you do your thing. And then at the end, you're like, okay, Mike, what are we doing? Are we gonna connect with the office? Like, to literally model that kind of collaboration in front of the kid, I think is so useful, because it acknowledges too maybe an emotional state in the kid that the kid can't articulate. I'm really upset right now. I don't really like this Chids guy. He's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. I came in here, I just didn't feel like I had a connection, despite the fact we maybe feel we have a connection. I like this topic. I like this topic a lot. And I had to really learn how to be that person to be open to somebody else's counsel in the same, another adult. Because when I was coming out of the restaurant business, there's nobody that I collaborated with. It was my way. Well, my way. I won't even say the highway. I did often offer the alternative. But I will say, I think I lost a little bit in that too, because I didn't allow myself to be open to other ways of being. So when I arrived in high school, man, I was an a-hole. Like my first year of teaching, I was treating all those kids like employees. I didn't really have a sense of what it meant to see them as humans. They were cattle. I'm not trying to be cruel. This was my mindset. They were there at the behest of me. And I actually had to say to myself, you can't fire these kids. You got them for 4 months, whatever, 5 months, you have them for a semester. I was like, damn, like, right, right. And despite the fact I was thinking to myself, they remind me of like little kid versions of the staff that they weren't. They were individuals that had different stories and different sort of like things going on. And they weren't clocking in the morning. They were willingly coming to school looking for an experience that in some cases I was completely chopping up for them, right? Making them feel like they were less than because they didn't organize the dishes properly in the cupboard, right? They didn't hit those compliance parts. I went further than I think. I picked up on the vibe. I'm not suggesting anything that I was saying. I was riffing on what you said. The one thing that I will go back to, just return to, that moment is incredibly difficult to, navigate and to get a satisfactory ending if you're the only one in the room having the conversation, or you somehow feel like you might not be supported. You might not be supported somehow in sort of pursuing this rule that everyone knows about, but this kid isn't following. I've been really fortunate with our whole device routine as far as implementing in my classroom. My kids are following it. And I haven't had to go beyond the warning stage, because the next stage is they have to go put their phones in a cart that we have in our classroom. It's basically where their laptops are stored when they don't have them. So they put it on their shelf. And then the next step after that would be, hi, administrator, come down and get the kid. No one is nowhere near that zone. And no one's really near level 2 as far as having to put into lockup. So, but myself and the EA in the room are both on the same page for that.
There is talk that they want to put this thing at the door, like a file system, but for phones. There's talk that
Mm,
they want to do that in student success. So you walk in, you just drop your phone in there, and then you sit down. You can get started on your work. And I really like that idea. I really like it because it's clear. You coming in here to work, your phone goes in there. And yes, if someone says, "Hey, can I use my phone yes, I'm most likely going to say yes. Sure. And then put it back in there and get back to work. And if that
mhm,
becomes a problem, then we got to pull back on that. So I like that idea because right now the kids come in and I just say, put your phone, I don't want to see your phone, put it away. Um, and has it worked perfectly? No, but has it gotten to a level where I've needed to make the call? No, just once it crossed my mind like, oh God, I think I have to move to nuclear level because this kid is just not this kid is just not complying with anything I've said to them.
mhm,
And I've spent minutes and I've invested time in speaking to the student in a respectful manner. Like, you know, everything I think I was like, okay, it's not supposed to work this way. I had one of those moments. It's not supposed to work this way. I told you what to do several times in different ways, in respectful ways, and you just aren't doing it.
mhm.
And we got other people around. It's that thing like, well, Jimmy's on his phone the whole time. Can I just check my messages? No. Jimmy's probably different than you are, so not everything that applies. Like there's just at the end of the day, I'm responsible and I want to make sure I'm doing my job. That's it. That's all I want. That's all I want.
I think I told you, maybe I didn't. Every week I send home a video newsletter. So just some point on Friday, pull out my phone, record like I'll throughout the week. So in my agenda on the Friday page, I'm constantly just putting little notes as far as what I want to kind of give back to the parents, stuff that pops up during the week. So the topic this week was actually, and I guess an advisory to the parents, letting them know that a reminder about what the school policy is on phones, and that um, to consider not texting their children during class time. And I said to them, I said, you're inadvertently putting your kid in a tricky spot. And I said, I'm not going to tell you not to, but I want to give you the context here. Your child is going to try and satisfy two rules at the exact same time, and it doesn't work out well. So they text, they hear it, or they feel the buzz. They know that you've texted. Maybe you follow up with, why aren't you answering? So now you've sort of upped it. They finally get to the text. They see that you're stressed or trying to communicate. And it's about, hi, honey, how you doing today? And I'll say, from your perspective, you're just waiting for an answer. So your blood pressure might be going up. You might be chill. You might be whatever. I said, from the classroom experience, though, this kid is trying to navigate, how do I not get in trouble and still respect my parents because of the rule? And I'm taking the positive intentions on both sides. I said, I showed the parents, I'm like, here's the bells. Here's the bells. Here's when your child would be in class. Here's where they are for lunch. So, of course, you reach out. I can't say anything to stop you. I said, however, you can text me if it's an emergency, because as the educator, as the person that's working with your kids, I'm reachable. You can text me with the texting app that we use. You can email me. You want to call into the school, you can do that too. I said, in the event that you're sending a text that the kid has to talk to you, the rule in my classroom is the student has to come to me and ask if they can use their phone. And then the student has to go to the doorway to do it. So I'm still holding the line as like, fine, you can use the phone, but you can't do it in the space that we've kind of anointed as a workspace. We're going to try and differentiate between the two. And then when you're done there, phone goes back in the bag or wherever it was previously. But it's interesting. So that's my tactic, was sort of dealing with but my parents have to be in touch with me, which is never as much of a challenge as the parents feeling, sorry, the kid waiting for the response. I don't think is as challenging to deal with as the parents' compulsion to reach out to their kids in the middle of the day. Because I think we're now the generation where everyone's kind of fluid in these communications. So, maybe a little bit of an older generation like me or like you, generation back, we're not constantly as much reaching out to kids. We're digitally fluent as well, but not the same. I don't think we were raised with the same singularity of texting our kids, if that makes sense. It's still a little bit more, I'm going to talk to them directly. Maybe not. I could be misreading it. But I would say younger parents, it's more of a fluency with them. That's what they lean on first. I mean, my family uses that and Post-it notes and conversation and sometimes phone calls. So yeah, just having that conversation about appropriate use, I had to flip it and actually say, hey, parents, you might be inadvertently triggering your kids.
I appreciate that. And so a couple of things have happened this year. I'm trying not to use my cell phone as much as I used to use it during the day,
Mm-hmm.
which means I'm not messaging my family. So um, I'll message them a few minutes before my school day starts, and I know my kids have the same like bell times as me. So I won't hear from them until lunch again, usually, which is good. And a couple of times this week, students have shown me stuff on their phone, and then I've made like a connection, like, well, where, show me. And I'm like, I don't have my phone with me. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm not supposed to be on my phone, just like you're not supposed to be on your phone. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not here. It's in my office space, and they're dumbfounded. I'm like, I get it. Um, and I'm kind of proud that I have enough discipline to put the phone down, walk away from it, right? So I'm like flexing on my pride, like, no problem for me. Well, and sometimes I'm jonesing, right? Because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could show this kid this photo, but I don't have my phone, and that's just the way it is. Um, which is kind of funny. And they're like, well, "Where's your phone?" I put it away. I'm working with you. Foreign. They're just looking at me like I'm nuts. Foreign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is the
What's up
world
with
we
this
live in.
guy?
Yeah, what's
Yeah,
up with this guy?
that's what it is. What's up with this guy? Get this guy over here. Listen to what he just said. Not carrying his phone.
Rochelle said
Crazy.
Rochelle said that she'd go to the moon and back for those that are struggling, but are at least trying to put in the work. I'm the
Mhm.
same. I'm happy to support anybody who's being genuine.
I love the conversation. Totally agree, Rochelle. I love that you gave me something to lean into because I find the more interesting conversation is what are your tactics for the ones that aren't trying? Because that's the sort of like the gray zone in what was said there. And I think that the more we talk about that, the more we broaden our skill set, the more we sort of say, um, and I believe you, Rochelle. I believe you. Never met you, but you're here. You've listened to at least one or two of our podcasts, so you know how me and Chids roll on this, and you know the spaces that we've been in. So it's kind of like there's kind of a no surprises here to a degree. You and I talking about this on this pod. For me, I'm like giving you an air high five, Rochelle, where I always automatically kind of diverge into though is like, okay, let's talk about the kids that aren't trying though. Let's get there. Let's get there. So we can move right past everyone. All the teachers are doing everything they think they can do, and they're giving up, time, money, wellness, emotion, um, all the sort of energies that are going into to sort of like light the kids up. And we say, okay, we'll go there conditionally, and I get that too because we want to make sure that we're staying well. How do we go to that space that feels unconditional, but tactically? Go there tactically so that we don't feel like we're completely stripping ourselves of our own dignity, our own wellness, our own balance. And this comes with having a team that has divergent skill sets because show me a teacher that thinks they're using all the tools, and I'll show you a teacher that's missing that one right one. And that can only happen a lot of times just through, well, hey, you could listen to this podcast, get lots of tools from this podcast, or, get outside your bubble, talk to people that you wouldn't normally interact with. And you might figure out that there actually is one more thing you can do for those kids that aren't trying. And they're trying resistant, right? They're actually trying resistant. Trying resistant means there's a story. And it didn't start with you, hopefully. Right? Well, I say hopefully because you could be, any teacher potentially could be patient zero for awesome stuff and not so awesome stuff. Like you might be a struggling student's origin story, and never know it. Never know it. I'm finding myself fiercely working away from that and making sure that I am not trying to. You never know, but really doing everything that I can, checking my ego, watching the strategies that I use, look for the data, look for the evidence, look for what's right in front of me, trying to keep it there. So I'm not a struggling student's origin story. And even despite that, I would likely will be. Likely will be.
Whew. I think our time has come.
We did good.
I think Rochelle left a while ago. She wished us a good weekend, so I suspect she took off, which is awesome. She's on to her day.
On to the good weekend.
Yeah, bon weekend, Rochelle. And Gary, thanks for hanging out and dropping a comment, even though you were driving. We're so bad.
Baby.
Like, where are you, Gary? You know? Gary, are you here? Poor guy's pulling over, voice to text. He's like, you guys leave me alone. I'm driving here.
That could be this year's decoded t-shirt. One of the selections. It's just Gary with exclamation marks. Where are you? Decoded podcast. I like that.
More than just a podcast.
More than just a podcast. We're a shout out. We actually are a shout out. That's what it is. The podcast is just a whole list of shout outs to people. So Rochelle, where are you? Bon matin.
Rochelle's having her nuggets.
That's it.
Okay, dude. Well, thanks for your time today. Thanks for everybody for listening.
Saysies, dude. I got to go check to see if the family's up.
I'm going to do the same. Then I got a ton of work to do before I can have some fun today.
Yeah. Same here.
Okay, this was season 8, episode 4, number 310 of the Decoded podcast. We'll catch you next time.
All right. Chat you later, bud. Peace.